In this video, we will take a look at square root equations such as this one over here. Here are the steps which I will go through one by one as we go through the examples together. It's quite easy to recognize this type of equation. We have a square root in the equation. We're looking for x. The question will say solve for x. And as you can see, there's a square root. X plus 3 is underneath the root over here. And then we got minus x equals 1. So your first step, and this will always be your first step, is to isolate the square root. So what I mean by that is get it alone on the one side of the equation. So in this example, minus x is preventing the square root from being alone. So we are going to do the opposite of subtracting x or minus x, which is plus x. We basically take it over. We do the opposite of minus x, which is plus x. Okay, now step 1 is done. The square root has been isolated. It is alone on the one side of the equation. My next step, the inverse operation of a square root is to square. Okay, so the opposite of square is square root. These are inverse operations. So essentially to get rid of the root. Okay, get rid of the root. We need to do the opposite of square root, which is squaring both sides. And I would like you to show on paper that you are squaring both sides. And when I say square both sides, you square the entire left-hand side, which includes our root, and the entire right-hand side together. So you do not, and I repeat, you do not square the individual terms. So you don't say 1 squared plus x squared. No, you square the entirety of the left-hand side and the entirety of the right-hand side. And then, as you should know, if you are square rooting the square, essentially you'll be left with x plus 3. So go back to my surd videos if you want to a recap on how the surd rules work, like that. So a quick way to think of it is the square cancels out the square root. That's just the shorthand, quick way of thinking about it. The square cancels out the square root, so you're just left with the x plus 3 on the left hand side. And then on the right hand side, we are squaring a binomial. I've done a video on a shortcut for squaring a binomial. You square the first term, you square the last term, you multiply these two together, so 1 times x is 1x, and you times it by 2. So like that. If you don't like thinking about it in terms of the shortcut, this 1 plus x squared means 1 plus x multiplied by 1 plus x. And you can just do the normal FOIL method. 1 times 1, 1 times x times 1, and x times x. Please do not forget about this middle term over here. A lot of students forget about it, and that's where they make the mistake in the exam. And then what do we do? Well, I can see that I have a squared term in my expression. So do you see the x squared over there? So we know that we're going to have a quadratic equation. We get it in standard form, so we make it equal to 0. And we get everything over to one side, so it's going to be x squared, and then 2x, and then we take this x over, it's going to become minus x, so basically 2x minus x. We've got the plus 1 on this side, and then the plus 3, opposite of plus 3 is minus 3. We make it equal to 0. So as you can see, after you squared both sides and then you expand, you must put it in standard form. So standard form is making the one side equal to 0. Standard form, because we see an x squared quadratic equation. I have a whole video on this if you want to go check it out. Make it equal to 0 and descending powers of x. And I didn't include this in my steps, but after you put it in standard form, how would you continue to solve this equation? This is a normal quadratic equation. You can see that you have to factorize this expression over here to trinomial. So you have 2 brackets, x and x. This is 2 times 1. I'm trying to make a positive 1. So we just factorize the trinomial. It's going to be positive 2 and then negative 1. I have lots of videos on factorizing if you need help with that. And then we solve like normal. So when we have a quadratic equation, we take that bracket, make it equal to 0. So x plus 2 equals 0. So x is negative 2, or x minus 1 equals 0, so x is 1. The very, very important thing about square root equations like these, you have to remember it, you must make a mental note, make a note in your book, is that you must test your solutions. Now, what do I mean by testing your solutions? You need to check to see if x equals -2 or x equals 1. You need to check if these solutions are valid. So you take these answers and you put it back into the equation and you see if it works. So let me show you what I mean. So according to my solving, there's two solutions, x is -2 or x is 1. We need to test if this works, so we take -2, and everywhere where you see an x, you place -2. You can do this on your calculator. You don't actually have to do it on paper, but I'm obviously going to do it on paper just to show you what I mean. So in the place of x, we're going to put -2. So we're going to do it like this, -2 plus 3, and then minus -2. Test the left-hand side of the equation, which I'm doing here. Get an answer. See what it gets you if you put this on your calculator. If you test this on your calculator, now remember you need to type it in correctly. So just look at how I typed it in. You need to type it in correctly. Make sure your root stops at the proper place. Like that. I know it's a bit blurry, but you can see what I mean over there. Then the left-hand side of my equation equals 3 according to my calculator. So all of this, the left-hand side, is equal to 3. This stuff is equal to 3. But look at the right-hand side of the equation. The right-hand side of my equation is 1. My left-hand side does not equal my right-hand side. What that means is that x cannot equal -2. It's not a valid solution. It's not one of the correct solutions. So you would go back to your answer, and because this solution doesn't work, you need to draw a line through that solution. It cannot work. Let's test the other solution. X is equal to 1. So now in the place of x, we are going to put -1. Sorry, not -1, +1. In the place of x, we're going to put +1. Let's see what happens. So if we look at the left-hand side of the equation, which would be this, in the place of x, we're putting 1, so it'll be 1 plus 3. Then outside of the square root, -1. Let's see what that gets me. The square root of 4, which is 2, -1, which is 1. So this side of my equation, the left-hand side of my equation, gives me 1. The left-hand side gives me 1. The right-hand side of my equation is also equal to 1. So here my left-hand side is equal to my right-hand side. So that solution is valid. So this is a valid solution. So only the solution of x is equal to -2 is not the correct solution. It's not a valid solution, which is why you must put a line through that answer. And that's how you do this sort of equation. Just remember to test your solutions. I will give you some more examples in another video. I will see you then. Bye, everyone.